Hello everybody and welcome to today's lecture. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to take a look at some minor elements that are in Maya, specifically looking at text, since this is an element that we really didn't need to get into, then it didn't really have a spot in other areas of our lectures. And also it's going to fit in with what we're doing with animation, and it's going to kind of piggyback on some other elements that we've taken a look at before. So I'm going to take a look at how to make text, and also this counts as numbers and all the like in Maya. And that's going to be the first part, to basically do that and to make it animatable. And a couple of little elements here and there. Now the second part that we're going to be getting into today is we're going to be importing shapes from Adobe Illustrator. Now this is going to be a little bit on the tricky side because although we can make any kind of shape that we want and a little bit better in Illustrator, there's some weird nuances here and there that can potentially throw some people off. So I did want to take a moment to be able to go over this today, specifically with this. And the third part that I wanted to talk about a little bit was talking about working with the Autodesk character generator. Now the reason why we're going to be taking a look at this is I would like us to basically make ourselves some characters that we can animate, so everyone would have an opportunity to basically take a look at that. So I wanted to make sure that I could point everyone in that direction, and hopefully you'll find that this is going to be pretty interesting. Now, for this, we're also going to be exporting the character. Now, in the past, there has been some times where the website was not working. If that does end up being the case, I will provide some pre-made models for everyone. But I really hope that everyone has an opportunity to make their own character. But I do want to go over areas that are very important, that are going to be essential for your success for the next week. So now the assignment that's going to be coming up, I'd like everyone to use either the text or the shapes from Adobe Illustrator to basically make themselves a quick little animation. And again, it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. I'm going to give some recommendations as we progress as well, so hopefully you can choose one or the other. So that's going to be the first part of the assignment. The second part is I'm going to have everyone make themselves a character and export it using very specific settings. Now, it's really important that we get through this because, again, I do want to get into some simple character animation so that you have a chance to basically see how that works. Potentially might be an option for a final if you decide that you want to explore this a little bit more. But all the due dates are going to be over here. So you'll have 1 week from today to basically work on this. And but the animation itself, the shorter animation, I might give you a little bit more time if you feel that it's necessary. But we're not going to go too deep into this today. So without further ado, let's begin. So we're going to start off in Maya. And what we're going to be doing for this is we're going to make ourselves, as I said before, some simple text. Easiest way to approach this is one of two different directions. You can either choose the little T for text, or go to Create and go to where it says Type. Now the first thing you're going to see that's going to come up here is you're going to see something that says 3D Type, like so. So what I would say is just to kind of change this around a little bit, in the attribute editor, which is where we are over here, you're going to go to the type area, and pretty much you can change this in almost most of your normal ways that you've been playing around with before. So elements that you can change up would be the following. You could obviously change the type that's over here. I'm going to name this, of course you need to make sure you're in the right section, Professor J, just because I thought that would be nice. And yeah, you can rename this however you want, but I'll keep this way for now. You can go into the drop down over here. You could choose different type of fonts should you want to go with something like that. A little bit too impactful, I'd say. Sorry, horrible pun. Ooh, I'm liking this. This makes me feel really fancy. Although again, if I was going to be going something that's more digital, I might want to consider something more sans. Ooh, I do have Calibari though. I kind of like this one. I'm going to stay with this one. I'm digging this. Don't get me wrong. The one that I had previously was very fancy, and I was digging the look. But I think for more practical purposes, this probably would be a better choice. And it also has options that you could take advantage of, say, for example, the bold, italics, and all this other fun stuff. And yeah, if there's any other elements that you need to put in, you could put that in over here. You could change the alignment so that it aligns in the center instead. You could change the font size to a bigger or smaller area. Oops. You could play around with the tracking, which spreads apart the text a little bit more, though I probably wouldn't recommend that actually. The leading would allow us to spread out areas. If, for example, we had more areas around here. So we're just going to add some more text. Trying this out. Yeah, so for the leading, this is spreading those areas a little bit more, so that's why I wanted to show this one specifically. But again, there's all kinds of things that you potentially could adjust and change with this. So actually, I'm going to keep this like this. I'm kind of digging where this is looking. So this is basically how you could start this off. Now, this is basically how you can make your text. The shell deformer, this basically has some elements that would allow us to kind of manipulate and change parts for animation. Now we're going to go to another area specifically for that, so don't worry about this area for now. And let's see here. Now, there's definitely a lot of different options in here, and I want to make sure I just give you the recommendations for the areas that are going to be the most useful for you. Yeah, and of course the the type of font that we have over here. This could be adjusted in. I'm sorry, the material that we have over here. This could obviously be changed a little bit later. So let's actually go back to the type. I'm actually digging this here. And yeah, we're just going to take a look at just some of the other options here specifically. I think this is going to give us most of the areas that we're going to need. So if there's any elements that we wish to adjust and change, we can actually go into the geometry area over here to add a little bit more to these sections. I'm not sure if I'd recommend going too crazy with this. So I think we had a 4 before. And if I put this to a higher number, it will add a little bit more geometry in these spots. Now, I'm not sure if I would recommend this too much, to be honest. I think actually a 4 would be fine in most of these cases. The reason why I'm saying that it might not be the wisest of decision to add more anyways is because all these faces over here are flat. So unless you're planning on doing some very specific animation, trying to change that up might be more problematic than helpful. So, but nevertheless, if you do need to add more geometry, the curve resolution should be able to help you with that. There's also options for deformers types. I'm not sure if I'd recommend changing that either, but at the very least, you have some options with what you have over here. Oop, you even have an option for extrude distancing. So if this is too thick, you can thin this up a little bit. If you want to make it thicker, you could do that as well. I'm not sure if I'd recommend playing around with that too much, but at least it's nice to know that you have the options to make these adjustments and changes. And you could even play around with what's called the bevel profile. Now, this seems to be the default, which I believe would be this option over here. Playing around with the other bevels will basically change the look of some of your shapes. Be cautious when doing some of these, as it can have weird repercussions later. But yeah, the biggest areas I would say for the geometry is the curve resolution and the extrusion that we have over here. I'm not sure if I'd go too much further beyond that. Also, potentially, if you need to, you could also add more divisions, because by default this is put at 4. If I put this at for 1, for example, you'll notice that these areas over here no longer have any divisions, where if I put this back to its normal 4, you see them come back. So again, depending on how you plan on adjusting and changing these will determine on how you keep those and such. Texturing I wouldn't worry about too much. I'm just going to continue here. But the animate, this could actually be somewhat interesting, because there's 2 ways you can animate with this. You could either A, basically change these to traditional polygonal objects, or alternatively, this actually has some animation options itself. Let's take a look at this. So these are a little bit different than what you're used to. I'm going to just tell you that right now. What I mean by that is you'll see the options for translate and options for rotate and scale. But check out what happens if we were to manipulate this. So if I wanted this to animate, first of all, I need to put a set key in the beginning. This is similar to what we did previously. Unlike what we did before, the set key will be done here. We just add the little set key in that case. Now I'm going to take I'm going to take 2 seconds. So I'm going to put this to frame 60. And what I'm going to do is, just to show you how the move option is going to be working, I'm going to take the translate I have over here. I'm actually going to add a set key in this case. Strike that. And the very first key, I'm actually going to change the translate X to, let's put the to 100. And then I'm going to add the set key here. So I probably will have to turn that a little bit higher, but this is basically what happens. So you think that when we translate this to that degree, and then when we try and put this back to its original spot, that it's going to all come at one time. But check this out. This is where it gets interesting. It still might be calculating, so I'm not sure if it'll get all in real time, but let's take a look. Yeah, so it's still kind of doing the calculations for this, but it's basically bringing them all little by little over this way. So it's a really unique way of doing this. I'm kind of digging how this is going. So again, it's just doing a quick little preview of this first. And then once it's done, you can see the real thing. And the way this is working, I put the amount of 100, so that basically went from left to right. You could also have this go down to up to down, and whatnot. So I'm actually going to go to my first frame over here. By the way, if you need to get rid of a keyframe, you could basically just right-click. Yeah, so I'm going to show you how to get rid of a keyframe too. If you hold Shift and click down in this area, you'll see that your view or your keyframe basically turns red. Now, once that happens, you can select the key itself by right-clicking and delete. So in the first frame, instead of putting that at 100, so I'm going to just get rid of that right now, put that at 0. I'm going to have this go from below upwards. Easiest way to approach that is maybe put that at -400 to get started, and then add my set key this way. Now the last key that I have, that's at frame 60, that's still at 0, so all the keys are going to go upwards like that. That's going to have a really cool look to it. But again, it does have to calculate this first, so do keep that in mind when working with this. There it is. But once it calculates everything, it should hopefully come up nicely. So it's still a little bit wonky, but with a little bit of practice, we can probably get this working okay. But this is kind of the interesting stuff that you could do with this should you want to go this route. And again, I'm going to delete what I've had here previously, because that's not the only way that we can bring this in. We could also have interesting fun with scaling as well. So for example, I could scale all these to 0 just to get started. And then add the set key here. Again, I'm going to change the translate to 0 at this time for this. Add my set key. It'll take a moment to kind of calculate this. So again, it's up to you if you want to either just wait for the bottom. And the way that you can tell if it's calculated, if you go to the very bottom, you'll see this little bar very slowly but surely do its calculations over here. Now, just a heads up, I'm working with a pretty good gaming computer, and it's taken a little bit of time, so definitely don't think that you're going to be able to get this done very quickly. You're going to need a little bit of time to make this work, but again, with a little bit of practice, you'll get some really interesting looks for this. And this is just one of many different directions you can go with the whole changing of your text. So if you have a chance, give each of these a try. So that looks really interesting. I'm digging that. So yes, I had this not really move so much, but I had it scale out instead. So you might find this could be an interesting tool to use if any of you might be getting into motion graphics or even just regular graphic design. You could make some very unique starting text for yourself. If we had a little bit more time, this would be something I would strongly recommend people try out, because again, if you're able to combine motion graphics and After Effects with 3D art, you could make some incredible looking visuals. But this is the first step to eventually getting there, and I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to try this out first before anything else. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so I'm just going to put this at the end for now. And okay, as stated before, this is one of many directions that you can do. Now I'm going to create myself some new text. And I'll keep it 3D type this time. I'm not going to get too fancy with this one. There we are. Okay, so for my 3D type, I'm going to put this in the middle over here. So what you saw was method 1, basically using the animation animate over here, the generator, to basically fix up whatever's necessary. With what I'm going to do here, however, I'm actually going to make it so that this has a little bit more control. Now, ideally, you'll have your option for outliner available here. You're going to need it. So if you don't have outliner available or viewable, go to where it says window and outliner, and this will get you started. So I'm going to turn this off so you can basically see what happens. So, or apparently I'm not going to turn that off. There we are. So window, outliner, and there I am. Now, just for the sake of ease, I'm going to put that to the side. There we are. Okay. Now, as I said before, if you do want to add your own spin to this, and I'll show you one of many different directions you can do with this, you could go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and you could basically delete all the elements we have over here and just basically make this normal meshes and such. Now, before you do this, make sure that this is actually what you want to do. If you like the other text and you want to use that for the assignment, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to have a little bit more control, going to Edit, Delete by Type, History will give you that kind of control. So now, this is normal text. So in other words, if I could go to Face, I could play around with this. I can make adjustments and changes if necessary. Anything that I need to do for here, I can do on my own terms. But I'm not quite done yet, because as you can see, if I just select this by itself, it's all text that goes together. So if I want these to be separate, I need to go one more step. Now, I usually just do this as a precaution. I'm going into my face option, right over here, and I'm selecting all the faces simultaneously. Now, once that's done, I'm going to use the separate to literally separate all the text from each other. So this is the way the text is right now. But the moment I go to separate, you'll see that all the text is over here. Basically polymesh 1, polymesh 2, polymesh 3, polymesh 4, polymesh 5, etc. And plus we have a transform manipulator over here. It really doesn't do anything. You could actually just lose that if you want to. But what's nice about this, actually I'll put that back for now. But what's nice about this is I now can animate this as a whole by hitting the little group that I have here, or I can animate these separately. Now, if you do decide that you want to go this route, it might not be a bad idea to use the D key to basically move your pivot point. So the D key will basically, D as in dad, will allow you to move your pivot point wherever you want. So I'm going to move this below my 3. I'm going to select this one, hit D, move this below this D. So that was 3. This is the D. This one I'm going to hit D and put this below. I'm not going to put it in the center this time. The main reason why is I really want this to be in the center. You'll see why in a moment. Put this in the middle as best I can. I'm trying not to move up or down when I'm doing this as well. Oop. Do not forget to hit D. There we are. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So now, if I wanted to, I actually could animate this in a way that's a little bit more free. Maybe a way that I think that could work better for my uses. Now, the way that I could do that is, if I move this back a little bit, I could take this 3 over here. I'm just going to go to the very center. And what I'm actually going to do, before doing that actually, I'm going to go to the 30 frame, and I'm going to select all the type that I have over here, minus, of course, the little transformation, and I'm going to hit S. Now, there's a reason why I'm doing it this way. I'm going to make it look like the text is coming out of nowhere and then all meeting here simultaneously. And then I'm going to move this off my screen. It sounds a little strange, but I'll go over the steps for this. So all of it's selected. It's at frame 30. I'm going to hit S, so that's my starting point and such. And I'm also going to select the group and hit S for here as well. It's best that you select all these differently, by the way. So, and then I'm going to go to the very beginning, and I'm just going to go to town with this. I'm just moving this guy over here. I'm moving this guy over here. I'm moving this guy up. I'm moving this one down. I'm moving this one over, and I'm moving this one down like this. And again, this is all at frame 1. So I'm hitting S over here and S for the group just to be safe. But now check this out. They're all coming together so that they can all basically be here at the same time for the next spot. So basically just hit and play. And if I want to go even further with this, I could even add in a little bit of rotation. So I'm just going to do that right now. And the rotation is just going to be random. I'm just basically having a little fun with this. And I'm selecting all my mesh objects. So now when I go over here to take a look at my text and I hit play, that's how it looks. Now the reason why I'm doing this as well, and something that's kind of nice about making your text this way instead, is you're not going to need to worry about having to re-render this first, like what you saw with the previous text. Not to mention you have full and total control over each individual type you have here. So I'm going to be honest, while the first version you had is simpler, this is a little bit less tech heavy, which can be helpful. And also you have a couple more options that could be neat for this. So for example, I have my text here. Now, again, if you're going to be making any kind of text that people want to see, you're probably going to need to keep it there for a good 3 seconds. So here's frame 30. I'm going to put this, technically I should probably put this to 120 myself, but let's see. Yep. Then I'm going to hit S for the type mesh. And then I'm just going to have this go about a second off the screen, so that's going to be 150. Because again, I'm going at 30 frames a second, or at least I should be going 30 frames a second. Then it's just going to disappear. So if you're able to follow a lot of the stuff last week, this week should be hopefully not too much more difficult. So let's take a look at how it looks. So our text comes in, 1, 2, 3, and the text goes off the screen. So that's another way that you could approach the whole animation process. So hopefully this gives you some ideas on what you could do with this. Just the last thing I want to show before I give everyone a chance to kind of work on their own stuff is basically just how to change the type color. Now this one's pretty simple because, I mean, all you would need to do is just go to the hypershade over here, make yourself a new surface, aka material, and you should be good. Good news, though, is most of the time when you make a new font, you also have a new material over here. So if you're happy with this, then you can keep it the way that it is. If you want it to be black, you could do that too. The only issue with being black is because the background usually ends up being black by default, so I'm not sure if I'd recommend that. But it's nice to know that you could make black text if you want to make this for a white background later. Or alternatively, if you want, you can just make yourself a really big plane. So making this about 90, by the way. And just going to make both of these really huge. When I say really huge, I'm talking about 1,000 by 1,000. There we are. So now I can go to my materials again. Just takes a moment or two. Might want to check my videos, my video settings here. But anyway, so just going to make that black. Don't forget, when you're changing your color, you should always hit OK or done. And then the background color, I'm going to make myself a quick little blend and make that like a white color or something like that. And by the way, you could always put in new materials anytime that you want. So if I hit play at this time, I now have a white background with the black text going this way. And not too shabby. And again, the nice thing about this is, at least for what we're doing for now, it doesn't take too long to get this done. So what I'd like everyone to do is try to make something like this yourself. Now, again, this is this is the homework part of this. Although you could do this as a little bit of practice first, like put your name, try the different methods of animation, and whichever one you like best, that could always be the one you turn in. But before you actually start your homework assignment, I do have the next video I'd like to show everybody, and that is going to be importing elements from Illustrator to Maya. Now, if you're not a big fan of the tools for Maya when it comes to creating splines and curves and beziers and stuff like that, I know I'm not exactly the biggest fan myself, this might be a way that could be a cool alternative for you. So I'm going to actually put that in video too, because this is getting to about 30 minutes. So I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to practice with this first before going to the next step. So hopefully you found this video informative and useful, and we'll see you on video 2 very shortly.